She told me, "My work husband and I cuddle sometimes. It's platonic. If you don't get it, that's your issue." I said, "You're right." The next morning, I canceled every reservation and gift for her birthday weekend. That night, she arrived with her friends and found out the table was canceled under reason. No longer needed. She broke down crying in front of everyone. If you looked at my Google Calendar 4 months ago, you would have seen an entry titled Operation 29. It was my girlfriend Isabel's 29th birthday weekend, and I had spent 4 months curating it with the precision of a quarterly marketing campaign. I'm a marketing manager by trade, and I treat my relationships with the same level of strategic thinking I give my career objectives. I don't do half measures. Isabel had been dropping hints for months that she wanted the full princess treatment, something that would look good on Instagram and feel expensive in real life. I delivered. The itinerary was locked and loaded. Friday night at the Copper Table, Denver's most exclusive steakhouse. I had to leverage a client relationship just to secure a table for 6. Saturday was a full-day spa package for her and her best friend Jenna, followed by a surprise overnight stay at a boutique hotel downtown. Sunday was brunch at her favorite rooftop spot overlooking the Rockies. Total investment, somewhere north of $2,800. I didn't care about the money. We'd been together 2.5 years, splitting rent on our apartment in Lodo. I loved her. I wanted her to feel valued. But while I was securing reservations and coordinating logistics, Isabel was securing an emotional connection with Bryce Sullivan. Bryce was the work husband. It started innocuously, as these things always do. 6 months ago, he was just the new account executive in sales who didn't understand the CRM system. Then he became Bryce who brings coffee during morning meetings. Then Bryce who really understands the pressure of hitting quarterly targets. I'm not a jealous man by nature. I have female colleagues. I understand workplace camaraderie. But the boundaries started eroding in ways that triggered every instinct I'd learned to suppress in the name of being a modern, evolved partner. Text messages started arriving at 10:30 p.m. "Work emergency?" I'd ask, glancing at her phone lighting up our nightstand. "No," she'd say, not looking up from the screen, her thumbs flying across the keyboard. "Bryce is just venting. He's going through a rough patch with Amanda. He needs support." "Annie needs that support from you at midnight?" I'd ask. She would sigh, that heavy theatrical sigh she used whenever I questioned her judgment. "He's emotionally intelligent, Colton. He's not like you. He doesn't repress everything. We have a connection that's purely intellectual and emotional. Why do you always have to sexualize everything?" That was her favorite defense mechanism. Therapy weaponization. Isabel consumed hours of TikTok, psychology content, and had learned just enough terminology to twist every situation into a character flaw on my part. If I asked for basic respect, I was controlling. If I expressed discomfort with another man taking her to lunch 3 times a week, I was insecure and projecting toxic masculinity onto her safe space. I tried to be the bigger person. I told myself I was the one she came home to. I was the one splitting the mortgage payments. I was the one planning Operation 29. Bryce was just a phase, a needy coworker she felt sorry for. I was wrong. He wasn't a phase. He was an audition for my replacement. The dynamic shifted completely 4 days before her birthday. I had just picked up her gift, a vintage Art Deco necklace she'd circled in a catalog months earlier, when I came home to find her on our balcony. She was on the phone, her voice dropped to that conspiratorial whisper people use when they're sharing secrets. When the sliding door clicked shut behind me, she jumped like she'd been caught. She hung up immediately. "Who was that?" I asked, setting the gift bag in our closet. "Just Bryce," she said, avoiding eye contact. "He's having another crisis with Amanda." "He seems to have a crisis every time I walk into a room," I said. My patience was wearing thin after months of this pattern. "You wouldn't understand," she snapped, walking past me toward the kitchen. "You're so emotionally rigid. Bryce feels things deeply. He just needs to know someone is in his corner." I let it slide. I didn't want to ruin birthday week with a fight. I told myself to get through the weekend, give her the perfect experience, and maybe then, once she felt celebrated and loved, we could have a real conversation about boundaries. Looking back now, I realize how naive that was. I was operating under the assumption that we were still partners working toward the same goal. She had already mentally checked out. I was an idiot. It happened on a Tuesday. I was in the kitchen making carbonara, her favorite, when Isabel walked in from work. She was sipping the wine I'd poured for her, staring at her phone with a soft, private smile that I hadn't seen directed at me in months. That smile used to be reserved for my texts, my surprises, my presents. Now it belonged to someone else. "How was work?" I asked, tossing the pasta with practiced efficiency. I had this routine down to a science. Dinner ready when she got home, wine poured, her favorite playlist queued up on the speaker system. "Intense," she said, not looking up from whatever was captivating her on that screen. Bryce had a panic attack in the break room around 2 o'clock. "Is he okay?" I asked, attempting to inject some sympathy into my voice, even though my jaw was starting to clench. "He is now," she said. She finally put the phone down and looked at me directly, her expression challenging, almost defiant, like she was daring me to react. I stayed with him. We went into the wellness room in the back office. I turned the lights off, and we just laid on the couch and cuddled for like an hour until his breathing regulated. The fork stopped moving. I stood there, frozen, pasta halfway to the serving bowl. The kitchen suddenly felt very quiet, except for the soft jazz still playing from the speakers. Music I had chosen to create a romantic atmosphere for a woman who was telling me about holding another man. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice eerily steady, though my heart rate had just spiked to dangerous levels. "Did you say you cuddled him on a couch in the dark?" She rolled her eyes with the practiced exasperation of someone who had rehearsed this conversation in her head. Taking another sip of wine I had selected and poured for her, she looked at me like I was being deliberately obtuse. "Oh God, here we go. Yes, Colton. We cuddled. It's called co-regulation. It's a somatic technique to help lower someone's cortisol levels. It was completely platonic." I turned the burner off with deliberate precision. I set the fork down carefully. I turned around to face her fully, giving her my complete attention for what I somehow knew would be a conversation that would change everything between us. "Isabel," I said, choosing my words carefully, "you are a 29-year-old woman in a committed relationship. You spend an hour lying in the dark in the arms of another man at your workplace. You genuinely don't see an issue with that." "No, I don't," she shot back, her voice rising with the righteousness of someone who had spent hours crafting her defense. "Because I'm an adult who understands that touch is a basic human need. Bryce was in distress. I provided comfort. It wasn't sexual. He didn't try anything, and neither did I. We just held each other." The way she said "held each other" made my stomach turn. There was an intimacy in those words that she seemed completely oblivious to, or perhaps willfully blind to. "And if I did that?" I asked quietly, keeping my voice level despite the rage building in my chest. "If I told you I spent my afternoon spooning the new intern because she was stressed out, you'd be okay with that?" She scoffed, a sound that managed to be both dismissive and condescending. "That's different. Men always make it sexual. With you, it would be predatory. With me and Bryce, it was spiritual. We have a soul connection, Colton. Honestly, I feel safer with him emotionally than I do with you half the time, because he doesn't judge me." Each word was like a small explosion in my chest. Soul connection, safer with him, doesn't judge me. She was comparing our relationship to her affair and finding me wanting. She was using the vocabulary of therapy to justify what any reasonable person would call cheating. She stood up from the kitchen island, walking around to stand directly in front of me. She looked at me with genuine pity, as if I were some primitive creature unable to grasp her evolved state of being. The condescension in her expression was almost breathtaking in its audacity. "My work husband and I cuddle sometimes," she said, enunciating every word like she was speaking to a child who couldn't understand basic concepts. "It's platonic. It's harmless. If you don't get it, if you're too insecure to handle me providing emotional support to a friend, then that's your issue. It's something you need to work on in therapy. I'm not going to shrink myself or my capacity for love just to soothe your ego." I looked at her, really looked at the woman I had spent 2.5 years building a life with. I thought about the engagement ring I had been researching online for weeks, bookmarking different settings and diamond cuts. I thought about the $2,800 currently pending on my credit card for her birthday weekend. I thought about the mortgage payments I'd been covering when she was between jobs last year. I thought about the hundreds of small sacrifices I'd made, the compromises, the times I'd bitten my tongue to keep the peace. And then I felt it. It wasn't anger, though anger would have been easier to process. It wasn't sadness, though sadness would have felt more familiar. It was the sensation of a heavy weight simply lifting from my shoulders. It was the click of a lock disengaging. It was the sound of a decision making itself. I realized in that exact moment that she didn't respect me. She didn't even fear losing me. She was so confident in her control over me, so certain that I was the safe option who would pay the bills and provide stability, while Bryce provided the excitement and validation, that she felt comfortable telling me to my face that she was intimate with another man. She was so sure of her power over me that she was actually lecturing me about accepting it. She was waiting for me to beg. She was waiting for me to yell so she could call me abusive and gaslight me further. She was waiting for me to apologize for being jealous, to promise to work on my insecurity in therapy, to accept my role as the provider while she got her emotional needs met elsewhere. I took a deep breath. I reached for the wine bottle and topped off her glass with steady hands. "You know what?" I said, my voice calm and measured, the same voice I used when delivering quarterly reports to senior management. "You're absolutely right." She blinked. The smug lecture that had been building on her lips died instantly. She looked confused, like an actor who had forgotten their next line. "I am?" "Yeah," I said, nodding slowly as if I were genuinely processing a revelation. "I've been looking at this all wrong. You're an autonomous person. If that's what you need to do to support your friend, who am I to police that? It was insecure of me to question your judgment." A slow, victorious smile spread across her face. She thought she had broken me. She thought she had successfully trained me to accept whatever behavior she deemed appropriate. In her mind, this was a victory. She had successfully gaslit me into compliance. "Thank you, Colton," she said, reaching out to touch my arm with what she probably thought was affection but felt more like ownership. "I knew you'd get there eventually. It really means a lot that you're working to be better for us." "I am," I said, returning her smile with what I hoped looked like genuine warmth. "I'm really seeing things clearly now." "Good," she said, turning back to her phone with the satisfaction of someone who had just won an argument. "Bryce will be so relieved. He was worried you'd freak out." "Tell him not to worry," I said, turning back to the stove to finish plating dinner. "I'm not freaking out at all." I wasn't. I was calculating. I was running numbers. I was making lists. For the first time in months, my mind felt clear and focused. I served dinner on the plates I had bought for our first apartment. We ate the pasta I had made from scratch while she told me about her day, about her excitement for Friday night, about how she had already posted on social media about her upcoming birthday celebration. She talked about how she had told all her friends that I was taking them to the copper table, how she couldn't wait to see what I had planned for the rest of the weekend. "It's going to be unforgettable," I told her, and I meant every word. When we went to bed that night, she turned her back to me and spent 20 minutes texting. I could see the blue light from her phone reflecting off the wall, and I could see her thumbs moving rapidly across the screen. I knew who she was talking to. I knew what she was telling him. She was probably reporting her victory, describing how she had successfully managed me, how she had put me in my place. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling more clear-headed than I had in months. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was just done. At 7 a.m. the next morning, she left for work. She kissed me on the cheek, a perfunctory gesture that felt more like marking territory than showing affection, breezy and happy, convinced she had the perfect setup, the devoted boyfriend who paid the bills and the exciting work husband who understood her soul. "Love you," she said, grabbing her coffee and heading for the door. "Don't forget to pick up the dry cleaning for Friday." "I won't," I said. The moment the door clicked shut, I got out of bed. I didn't go to work. I called in sick, something I rarely did, and went to the kitchen table. I opened my laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet titled Operation 29. I picked up my phone and dialed the restaurant first. "Good morning, this is Colton Pierce. I have a reservation for 6 this Friday under my name. I need to cancel it." "Of course, sir. Would you like to reschedule for a different date?" "No," I said, my voice steady and businesslike. "But I have a specific request. My ex-girlfriend doesn't know it's canceled yet. She might still show up with her party. Can you make sure there's a clear note in your system?" "Certainly, sir. Is there a specific reason code you want us to log?" "Yes," I said, feeling a cold satisfaction as I spoke the words. Put it down as service no longer needed. Service no longer needed, she repeated, sounding slightly confused by the unusual phrasing. That's correct. Make sure it's visible on the screen if anyone asks about the reservation. Understood, sir. The cancellation is processed. I hung up and immediately dialed the spa. Same conversation, same reason code, then the hotel, then the florist who was supposed to deliver roses to the restaurant. Then I called the boutique where I had bought the necklace and confirmed their return policy was 30 days with receipt. By noon, I had systematically erased her birthday weekend. Every reservation, every surprise, every carefully planned moment. All of it gone with a series of polite phone calls. The precision felt oddly satisfying, like closing out a failed project at work. By 2 p.m., I had packed my clothes, my electronics, my important documents, and anything else that mattered to me into my car. I was methodical about it. I didn't take anything that was ours, just what was mine. I even left the coffee maker, though I had been the one to buy it. I wanted a clean break. By 4 p.m., I was checked into a corporate extended stay hotel across town, the kind of place that business travelers used for long-term assignments. Clean, anonymous, efficient, perfect for what I needed. I left nothing behind in our apartment but my key on the kitchen counter, and the echo of her telling me that her emotional affair was my psychological problem to solve. She was right about one thing. It was my problem, and I had just solved it. I spent Friday afternoon in my temporary suite, working remotely on quarterly projections. My phone sat on the coffee table, face up. I hadn't blocked her number yet because I needed the confirmation. I needed to know that the message had been delivered loud and clear. Around 4 p.m., the first text arrived. Leaving work now, going straight to Jenna's to get ready. Can you bring that navy blazer I like? The one that matches my dress. See you at 7:30. Love you. I stared at the screen. The audacity was almost impressive. Less than 48 hours ago, she had told me that my discomfort with her intimate relationship with another man was a character flaw I needed to address in therapy. Now she was requesting wardrobe coordination for her big night out, fully expecting me to play the role of the devoted boyfriend and personal stylist. I didn't reply. I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon and settled in to watch the show. At 6 p.m., another message. Hey, just checking in. Are you on your way? Traffic is crazy downtown and we don't want to be late. I took a sip of bourbon. I wasn't on my way. I was watching a documentary about Arctic expeditions, feeling a kinship with the vast, silent landscapes on my screen. Waktor. 7:15, the group chat, which included Isabel, Jenna, and 2 other friends, Monica and Casey, exploded with activity. Jenna posted a selfie. The 4 of them in an Uber, all dressed to kill. Isabel looked absolutely stunning in a black silk dress I had bought her for Christmas. She was beaming, holding a glass of champagne, looking like she owned the world. The caption read, "Birthday queen en route. Colton, where are you? We're getting thirsty." I felt a phantom twinge of guilt, muscle memory from my old self, the accommodating boyfriend who would have panicked at being late, who would have dropped everything to rush to her side. But then I remembered her words. If you don't get it, that's your issue. The guilt evaporated like morning mist. At 7:28, my phone buzzed again. We're at the bar. The hostess says our table isn't ready yet. I thought you had this completely locked down with your client connection. I leaned forward, setting down my glass. The show was about to begin. The next 20 minutes played out through my notification screen like watching a controlled demolition in real time. 7:35. Colton, where are you? The hostess keeps checking her computer and looking at us strangely. 7:38. This is Jenna. You need to get here now. Isabel is starting to stress, and this isn't funny anymore. 7:40. Missed call from Isabel. 7:41. Missed call from Isabel. 7:42. Missed call from Jenna. I could visualize the scene with perfect clarity. The ambient atmosphere of the copper table, soft lighting, clinking crystal, the quiet conversations of Denver's business elite. Isabel standing at the hostess station, her confident smile beginning to falter as something clearly wasn't right. Her friends shifting uncomfortably behind her in their heels, checking their phones, starting to feel the awkwardness creeping in. The hostess, probably a college student working her way through school, checking and rechecking her computer system, finding the cancellation note that didn't make sense, dreading the moment she would have to deliver bad news to someone's birthday celebration. Then came the text message that told me the bomb had detonated exactly as planned. 7:45. What the hell, Colton? 7:46. They said you canceled. They said you canceled everything. 7:47. Service no longer needed. Are you insane? Everyone is staring at us. Pick up your phone right now. My phone began vibrating continuously, not just ringing, but seizing with incoming calls. She was panic dialing me, probably standing outside the restaurant now, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I let every call go to voicemail. I could see it playing out. The hostess finally having to explain the cancellation, probably reading directly from her screen because the reason code was so unusual. Service no longer needed. The phrase would hit Isabel like a slap. It wasn't a family emergency or sudden illness. It was a business termination. It reduced our relationship to a service contract that had been canceled for cause. And the worst part for her, the part I had calculated would hurt the most, was that her friends witnessed every moment of it. Jenna, Monica, Casey. The women she had undoubtedly bragged to about how well trained I was, how she had me wrapped around her finger. They watched her being discarded in the most public, humiliating way possible. 7:55, voicemail notification. I played it back. Background noise was chaotic. Street sounds, car horns, the bustle of downtown Denver on a Friday night. Her voice was breaking. Colton, pick up your phone. I don't understand what's happening. We're standing outside the copper table, and they said you canceled our reservation. They said the card on file was removed and Jenna had to pay for our drinks at the bar. And it was $87 and everyone is looking at us like we're idiots. Where are you? Are you at the apartment? I'm coming home right now. We need to talk about this immediately. You can't just do this to me on my birthday. She still didn't understand. She thought this was a tantrum she could manage, a mood she could talk me out of. She thought this was the opening move in a negotiation. 8:10. Jenna texted me directly. That was incredibly cruel. Isabel is hyperventilating on the sidewalk. Whatever your problem is, you don't humiliate someone publicly like that. Be a man and answer your phone. I finally typed a response, not to Isabel, to Jenna. Ask her about Bryce. Ask her about the break room cuddling sessions. Ask her about co-regulation techniques. Then tell me who's not being a man here. I put the phone back down and finished my bourbon. 8:30. I'm at the apartment. Colton, where is all your stuff? Your clothes are gone. Your computer is gone. Did you move out? What is happening? The realization moment. She had rushed home expecting to find me sulking in our bedroom, ready to have the fight she had been preparing for all evening. Instead, she walked into a space where I had been systematically erased. I had been thorough and efficient. My clothes, my electronics, my books, even my coffee maker, all gone. The apartment wasn't empty. Her stuff was everywhere, just as I had left it. But the space where I used to exist was simply air. 8:35. You moved out. Are you seriously ending our relationship over cuddling? Colton, this is completely psychotic. You're blowing this completely out of proportion. 8:40. Please come back. I'm scared. I don't want to be alone tonight. We can work through this. 8:45. Bryce is just a friend. I'll block him right now if that's what you want. I'll never talk to him again. Just come home and we can fix this. The progression was textbook psychology. Attack the reaction, play the victim, then desperate bargaining. But she was missing the fundamental point. I didn't care if she blocked Bryce. Bryce wasn't the problem. The problem was that she had looked directly at my pain and told me it was a character flaw I needed to fix in therapy. She had violated the basic contract of our relationship. I support you. You respect me. She had decided unilaterally that my feelings didn't matter, that my boundaries were negotiable, that my role was to fund her lifestyle while she got her emotional needs met elsewhere. I scrolled through the messages, feeling lighter than I had felt in months. For 6 months, I had been walking on eggshells, trying to be the modern, evolved partner she demanded, suppressing every instinct that told me something was wrong to avoid being labeled as controlling or toxic. Now I was the villain in her story, and honestly, it felt liberating. 9 p.m. Fine, ignore me if that makes you feel better, but you owe me for the hotel and spa reservations. You promised me this weekend and I made plans around it. 9:15. I responded for the first time since leaving. I promised my girlfriend a birthday weekend, but she resigned from that position on Tuesday to pursue other opportunities. I just processed her termination. 9:16. I hate you. 9:20. Perfect, now we're even. I blocked her number. Then I blocked Jenna. Then I blocked Monica and Casey. Then I ordered pizza from the place she always said was too greasy and watched the rest of my documentary. But I wasn't finished. While she had been crying on the sidewalk outside the copper table, I had composed one final email. Not to her, to Amanda Sullivan, Bryce's wife. I didn't just leave Isabel. I removed the entire foundation of her emotional affair. My message was brief, factual, and surgical. Hi, Amanda. I'm Colton Pierce, Isabel's ex-boyfriend. Yesterday, Isabel told me she and your husband spent an hour cuddling in the dark at their office for what she called emotional regulation. She insisted this was normal workplace behavior. I disagreed and ended our relationship. I thought you should know how your husband spends his work hours, in case your definition of appropriate workplace conduct differs from theirs. Best regards, Colton. I sent it Saturday night and slept like a baby. The corporate investigation that followed was swift and thorough. By Monday morning, while I was settling into a productive week of remote work from my temporary suite, Isabel was walking into an office that had become a battlefield. She expected sympathy from Bryce. She expected him to defend their connection, to validate her feelings, maybe even to finally leave Amanda for her. Instead, she got a meeting invite from Human Resources. Bryce hadn't stood up for their soul connection. When Amanda confronted him with my email, he had thrown Isabel completely under the bus. He claimed she had been pursuing him inappropriately, that he felt uncomfortable but didn't know how to handle the situation. Professionally, to save his marriage and his career, he had gone to HR preemptively and filed a formal complaint against her for creating a hostile work environment. The investigation took 2 weeks, a realistic timeline for corporate due process. During that time, Isabel was placed on administrative leave while HR interviewed witnesses and reviewed security footage. The wellness room had cameras in the hallway. The timestamps corroborated everything. By the end of the month, she was terminated for violating company policy regarding appropriate workplace conduct. That afternoon, I received an email from her corporate account before IT could shut it down. You destroyed my life. Are you happy now? Bryce won't speak to me. Amanda called me horrible names. I lost my boyfriend, my job, and my reputation in 2 weeks. How could you be this vindictive? I thought you loved me. I moved the email to trash without responding. The silence was my answer. I wasn't vindictive. I was a mirror reflecting back the reality she had created. She had wanted Bryce. She got the real Bryce, a man who used her for validation and abandoned her the moment it became inconvenient. 6 months later, I ran into her at a professional networking event downtown. I looked excellent, 15 pounds lighter, better haircut, wearing a tailored suit I had bought with money I wasn't spending on princess weekends. I had started seeing someone new, a nurse named Melody Foster, who I'd met through a mutual friend at a hiking group. Melody valued direct communication and genuine connection. Being with her felt like breathing fresh air after years underwater. Hello, Isabel, I said, my voice polite and professional, the tone I used with former vendors. She looked tired. The main character energy she used to radiate had dimmed considerably. You look good, she said quietly. I am good. I'm doing really well, actually. She took a shaky breath. I miss you, Colton. I know I made mistakes, but what you did, the punishment didn't fit the crime. I lost everything. You didn't lose everything, I corrected gently. You lost the things you took for granted. There's a difference. Bryce was a mistake. He used me. I see that now. But we had 2.5 years together. Doesn't that count for something? I looked at her and searched for any residual feeling. Anger, love, even pity. There was nothing. Just recognition of someone who used to be important. I think the issue is that you still don't understand what those years meant, I said. The bartender called out, "Old-fashioned for Colton." I walked to the bar, collected my drink, and headed back toward my table where Melody was waiting. We had dinner plans afterward, nothing elaborate, just a quiet place where we could talk about our weeks and plan a weekend hiking trip. As I walked away, I didn't look back. Isabel belonged to a version of myself that no longer existed. Service was no longer needed, and for the first time in my adult life, I was completely authentically free.